All right, we are going to start chapter 7, which is a kind of a new concept, yield percents. We have not talked about yield percents in any of our classes, maybe a little bit in Cuisine Chef. So, the objective of doing yield percents is that you're going to calculate this yield percent. You're going to find out what it is when given the weights of an as purchased quantity and an edible portion quantity of fruit or vegetables. So we're not going to use a ton of information from chapters 1 through 6. You might reference some of the equivalencies, but you're going to use some new formulas and whatnot other than the bridge method. It doesn't mean that it might not come up, but you're going to see some new formulas in this next couple of chapters. All right. So to get started, what the heck is yield percent? So why is this essential? So yield percent right here is commonly used in the kitchen to help with consistency. So if a kitchen has a standard for the percent of a potato that is left after it's peeled, then the chef will be much more aware of variations from that standard. So what does that mean? When you purchase ingredients like potatoes, fruits, and they have a peel, okay, you're not using all of it for your intended purpose, okay? So this yield percent is gonna assist with whoever orders food to make sure that they order the right amount, that they are costing it out accurately so that they are still making profit, and that they have enough servings from the amount of food that they're ordering, all right? So here's some visuals for you guys. This is a green pepper. So this is the edible portion, and then this is the waste. So it's showing that of a green pepper, 82% of it is edible and can be used for a dish or whatnot, and 18% of it is not. But when you're ordering it in pounds, you have to constitute for that waste, that part you're not going to use. So you'll see the food waste, edible versus inedible. All right, so you're going to take that into consideration. Some terms to be familiar with that we're going to be using throughout this chapter and chapter 8 is as purchased quantity, which is known as APQ. This is the weight, volume, or count of the product as it is received from the vendor. So, for example, the cost of 50 pounds. So when I have the little hashtag, that means pounds. Bag of potatoes before fabrication means cut down, is the as purchased quantity or APQ. So when I buy a bag of potatoes, it's as is before I cut it down, before I do anything to it. I'm eating 50 pounds, and that's my as purchased quantity. Not all of it is edible. So from that, you'll break it down to calculate out your edible portion quantity, also known as EPQ. The edible portion is the yield after the product is trimmed down. So based on these potatoes, I'm going to fabricate them, meaning I'm going to peel them if I don't want to use the skin. And I'm only going to use the flesh. Okay, so you begin by weighing the product before cleaning. Okay, then you're going to trim, fabricate, and portion the product, and then you'll weigh the edible portion, and you'll divide that by the AP weight. Okay, so we'll be practicing calculating out the edible portion, and then there's the trim. The trim is the weight or volume of the actual waste, the part you do not eat. So mathematically speaking, it's the difference between the APQ and the EPQ equals the trim. Okay, so you're subtracting the as purchased price from the edible portion, and then that should give you the accurate trim. Starting with my bag of potatoes example, a 50-pound bag of potatoes yields about 42.5 pounds of cleaned, peeled potatoes, leaving about 7.5 pounds of trim, or in this case, peel. And you can see that calculated right here for you. Okay, so pretty straightforward. So here's some issues with yield percent. We use yield percent to obviously help us order the minimum amount of food. So, for example, if the recipe calls for 3 pounds of peeled potatoes, the yield percent will help you make sure you have enough and constitute for that trim. All right. It's going to help you with recipe costing to make sure that your selling price reflects the total cost of the potatoes with the trim included. And then just going back to the 50-pound bags of potatoes, you're going to determine the maximum number of servings that a purchased amount will yield. So for example, the 50-pound bag of potatoes, you can compute using the yield percent how many portions of mashed potatoes you can obtain from the actual 50-pound bag. So that's all helpful if you are, when you're working with restaurants and earning profit. So here is the yield percent formula. So my suggestion to you is when I give you the practice problems, always go back to the slide and just put it into the formula. There it is written as yield percent equals edible portion quantity divided by as purchased quantity, and you're going to multiply that by 100, and that's going to give you the percent because you're calculating hence yield percent. There's also this triangle. Okay, so the triangle is another way that you can work out the yield percent. You can put EPQ on the top, and then you divide by APQ and multiply by yield percent. So it kind of depends on which parts you have. So to kind of put into the formula, all right? The part is the edible portion quantity. The whole is the as is purchase quantity, and the percent is the actual yield percent. Okay, so steps for using the EPQ, APQ, and yield percent triangle. So this is how are you going to use this depending on what information is provided. So step 1, determine what you are looking for. Are you looking for the as purchased quantity, the edible portion quantity, or the yield percent? And then this slide is going to break it down for you. So to find the edible portion quantity, you're going to use these steps, and you're essentially covering up what you're looking for. That essentially becomes X. Then to find the as purchased quantity, you'll follow these steps. Again, covering up whatever you're looking for becomes X. And then the same thing to find the yield percent. If you're confused, ask your teacher to, finish going through this, but your teacher can help you, kind of show you how to do it. But I think it will make a lot of sense to you when you start going through the practice problems. Okay, so here are the steps kind of written out for you again with a visual. So step 1, to calculate the yield percent of a fruit or vegetable, you must first identify the edible portion and the as purchased quantity. Okay, so you can see the as purchased quantity is right here. Okay, you see it, 10 pounds of potatoes. And then the edible portion quantity is when they're peeled, and that breaks down to 8.5 pounds. Okay, and then this is the trim. So you subtract the 2, and that's giving me the amount of the trim, which is 1.5 pounds. Now I'm going to put it into my yield percent triangle. So to determine if the units, step 2, are the same before calculating the yield percent, and you'll use the bridge method if you need to. And then step 3, you'll substitute the weights of EPQ and APQ into the formula and solve. So here you can kind of see it's been done. So here is the yield percent equals EPQ divided by APQ. So the edible portion quantity in the triangle goes on the top. I have that amount. It's 8.5. I'm going to divide by the APQ. That goes on the bottom, okay, which is 10 pounds. So 8.5 divided by 10, and that equals 0.85 as a decimal. But I want to find out the yield percent. So I'm going to multiply that by 100. Whenever you're finding a percent, it's always out of 100. And I'm going to have 85%, okay? And that is going to give me my full yield percent, okay? Here's another example. You can kind of see it broken down for you. Identify the EPQ and the APQ. 5 pounds of whole lemons. The EPQ is 5 pounds of whole lemons when you're looking at it, and then it's 36.5 fluid ounces of the actual lemon juice. And then determine if the units are the same before calculating. And I put this into the bridge method. So I have the fluid ounces here, over 1, multiplication, sign, draw your line. There's 16 ounces in a pound. We're breaking it down to pounds. And then you do the calculation just like you're applying the bridge method. I end up with 2.28125 pounds of lemon juice. And then I can put it into the yield percent formula, depending on what you're looking for. And at this point, I'm looking for the percent. So after rounding up, it's safe to say that 45% of the weight of the lemons purchased will be juice. Okay, you can see that all broken down. Here's another example, again, with the potatoes. Same example I kind of explained at the beginning, okay, but very visual. And this leads us into our practice problems. So there'll be a separate screencast, go through the practice problems, look at your triangle, look at your formula, follow the steps, and then use the screencast for chapter 7, written practice problems, to check for accuracy or see how to do it. Thank you.